So before we get into this week's podcast, I do have to make an apology for what I said on last week's podcast related to Jerry Stiller. I had originally said Arthur Stiller instead of Jerry Stiller because he recently has passed away. And I said that because he played Arthur on King of Queens and I got it confused, and I'm sorry. But it's very much Jerry Stiller from any number of things, including Seinfeld.
And also Ben Stiller's father.
And Ben Stiller's father.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, an unfortunate mistake given that he has recently passed, but I'm glad that you cleared that up.
Yeah, it's off my chest. I really feel better, even though I've felt really terrible the whole week up until now.
I'm glad that you got that clarified. I have a lesser, but also error to acknowledge. So, 2 episodes ago, on the Midway podcast, I had called Roland Emmerich Ronald. Now, I don't know if I did it multiple times. I probably did, knowing me. I had it in front of me on my phone. I don't know what I was doing, but I was tweeted a picture of Ronald McDonald, and they were like, yeah, this is not Roland Emmerich. I'm like, ha 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 ha, funny. So, anyways, at least, we're getting into like this rhythm of having to apologize like every other episode.
Yeah, it's kind of become our new thing, I guess.
Yeah, we should have like a blooper section, but rather like a correction section or something. Because, we're just that bad. So, if you guys don't know, I'm Shay.
I'm Tyler.
This is Cinematically Correct. And we basically make errors on almost every podcast. Because
we basically screw up every podcast that we ever put out.
Yes, we do. So if you guys don't know what our format is, we do a lot of research on these movies, but we are basically film novices, I guess you can say. So we don't know pretty much anything before we do our research.
And then we also do the podcast generally in one take, and it's on the fly, so we're kind of flying without a net a lot of the time.
So we're having conversation, and, obviously, because we're not experts on what we're talking about, we do make the occasional gaffe. And honestly, I do appreciate when people let me know because I do want to learn and know more. But gosh, I wish that I could get through an episode without making a mistake.
Here's hoping.
But it ain't going to be today.
All right, so this week was my choice, which was Catch Me If You Can.
No one will be surprised that was your choice.
Well, I love this movie. You've never seen it.
Well, I have now.
Well, you have now.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a very great cast. It's got Tom Hanks, Leo DiCaprio, etc. So
Christopher Walken. Amy Adams.
Exactly.
Jennifer Garner.
She's in it for
Ellen Pompeo.
5 minutes.
It doesn't matter. I can just keep going.
Okay.
Anyway, so you are going to want to talk about this movie for about the rest of your life. So let's get into the beer before I let you just take it away.
So I have Aeronaut, which is an Imperial India Pale Ale. And it's going to murder my face. There weren't a whole lot of airplane-related beers at the store.
Not that it had to be airplane-related. This is a movie about check fraud.
I know.
So it could have been banking-related. It could have been...
Surprisingly,
he was also a doctor. He was also an attorney.
Surprisingly, not a whole lot of overlap between the beer brewing community and those professions.
Oh, I mean, really?
Yeah, a little bit.
I didn't know. I thought it would actually be, like, real popular. Satisfying.
That's actually not bad.
Doesn't smell too harsh.
No, it's not. It doesn't taste overly like Christmas tree.
Well, that's always a plus.
And it's not overly bitter. So it's not bad. I'll give it a 3.25.
I mean, not your best rating, but it is an IPA, yeah?
No, it's an Imperial IPA.
Oh, rough.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can't have them all good.
Occasionally would be nice.
Your last few have been good. What are you talking about?
Fair. So, where do we go from here? Brief synopsis?
You gotta do your brief synopsis. Let everybody know who hasn't seen this movie what it's about.
Brief synopsis.
So this movie is about Frank Abagnale Jr. It's based off real life narrative about his life of being a con man, essentially, doing all kinds of schemes and scams and check fraud being the primary one. He becomes an airplane pilot, a doctor, lawyer, all of that just to
teacher,
escape reality and live the life that he wants to lead, basically.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. Sounds about right.
So that's the movie.
All in a nutshell.
And he's chased by Tom Hanks and the FBI.
Yeah. Okay, so do we want to go through the characters real quick?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I mean, obviously the first one would be Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes, I think he is probably the best choice for that role that I could come up with. Like, he is both smooth but has that kind of serious tone that you need for this, where certain other people that are just smooth, it's kind of over the top, and it would rub you the wrong way if you had to watch a whole movie of some guy being an unrepentant con man.
Fair. I mean, so you saw, I'm sure, they were considering Johnny Depp for the role.
They were, which I don't think would have been nearly as good a choice.
So, I mean, I think of Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean, how smooth he is in that movie.
Well, yeah, but he's also half drunk for that movie, or at least pretending to be drunk for the entire movie. So
what's wrong with that?
I don't know. It's a different kind of charismatic acting. Like, it's just different.
It is. I mean, the only other person that comes to mind, is probably just because we saw a trailer by him, would be James McAvoy.
I mean, the only other person that can't do it now, but could have pulled that off would have been Paul Newman.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, my heart. My whole heart.
That's what I think of when I think of Leonardo DiCaprio. I think of that kind of...
Or Robert Redford. They're very similar.
Similar. It's that smooth, but it's not the over-the-top, flashy smooth.
Yeah. Now, and this is a role, so I think we talk about this quite a bit, that a lot of times with movies, when it's an actor who's blockbuster famous, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio is Leonardo DiCaprio, it sometimes can be hard to see past the actor.
Right.
And in this movie, I really didn't find myself, like, just seeing Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, I really saw the role, and that worked well for me, where I definitely find there's a lot of movies that is not the case.
Well, certain movies, I think it helps that this is one of the movies that got him there. Like, there was Titanic and this movie and a couple other movies.
Oh,
but
God.
He wasn't really the same Leonardo DiCaprio that he was, or is now, back then when this movie was shot. So
does that matter though for us in retrospect?
I think it does. For me, it's just I notice more the big name actor in a movie after they've done their like pinnacle role and you've seen that movie.
Well, right, but I mean for this, or at least for me, I saw his pinnacle role before I saw this movie. So does that still hold water?
I don't know.
I don't know.
But I wasn't struck by anything because it was Tom Hanks. It's Tom Hanks, but he fits into any movie he ever does. Like,
see, so I was gonna say different for this. So okay, we'll move on to Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks plays Carl Hanratty, which is the FBI agent who is the one who's chasing him, chasing Leonardo DiCaprio throughout the film, and is also the one that kind of befriends him throughout the film. But for him, I felt he stuck out. I mean, he was great in his role and everything, but, like, I could not see past Tom Hanks. Like, he was Tom Hanks. Like, I felt like he was a father figure to Leonardo DiCaprio, which was intentional, but also because Tom Hanks is a father figure to the world.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt like this movie was fairly seamless for all of them because they all were huge A-list celebrities for the most part, and they just all worked in harmony. It's kind of like The Departed. So, like, this
movie.
There's so many big names in that movie, but they all work together. Like,
see, that movie I agree. In this movie, I thought Tom Hanks stood out. I did not buy him as a FBI agent. He's Tom Hanks, and he will always be Tom Hanks. He was wonderful, and I didn't see anything wrong with his role, but because he's Tom Hanks, he stood out to me as he's going to be a father figure, and that's what it's going to be, and if he's not, then...
Well, did you have that same thought in Saving Private Ryan?
No.
Really? But he was more of a father figure to the entire group of them in that movie.
Maybe it's because he wasn't as on screen. I mean, in this movie, he's like half the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
I guess that's fair.
I'm curious what you guys think, though. Like, if you felt like Tom Hanks or Leonardo DiCaprio, either one, really stood out as themselves, or if they really melded into the roles that they were meant to be. I'm curious.
Tom Hanks, actually, is my Lord of the Rings reference. So Tom Hanks was in Sleepless in Seattle with Dana Ivey, who is in The Adventures of Huck Finn, with Elijah Wood, who is Frodo in Lord of the Rings.
Reach.
Wow.
Well, you just did like a ping pong. Bing, bing, bing.
It was, okay, it is not the strongest one I've ever done, but this one was difficult.
Maybe you should start picking movies based on your references.
maybe you should remember to pick your reference ahead of podcast recording.
Oh, please. Most of the time I have to remind you, so watch yourself.
All right.
Watch it. Anyways, so Tom Hanks, do we have anything more to say about his character before we move on?
I think that's Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks. If you don't know who Tom Hanks is, then do you watch movies?
Okay, so then there's Christopher Walken, who plays Frank Abagnale, which is the father of Leonardo DiCaprio. He, in the movie, is portrayed as not a con man per se, but definitely...
salesman. He's definitely smooth. He's got the polish of getting what he wants because he can talk his way out of a jam.
Right, but he also is in trouble with the FBI or something.
IRS for tax fraud.
Yeah, so he is kind of broke throughout most of the movie, which also leads to his divorce, and it's definitely a setup for why Leo decides to run away and basically why he wants to impress his father.
Right.
So, I mean, Christopher Walken is, again, Christopher Walken, just like Tom Hanks, so, I mean, there's nothing not to like.
I mean, I think he did a very good job of toning down his very, delayed speaking pattern.
Your speaking pattern?
My speaking pattern.
Yeah.
Although I sound nothing like Christopher Walken, but
you could never reach that level.
No. It's he was actually normally speaking in this movie, which is kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah, and he normally, well, at least in the movies that I see, he's normally playing a villain, and in this movie, you're kind of rooting for him, so...
He's just a down-on-his-luck guy that has fallen on the wrong hard times, and
a little too smooth for his own good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, it's mostly ancillary characters. I mean, there are obviously big names. There's Amy Adams, there's Jennifer Gardner.
Martin Sheen.
For Grey's Anatomy's fans, there's Ellen Pompeo. So there's quite a few people in here. Do you need to go through any of them?
No, not really.
There is one, obviously, because I have to do a Gilmore Girls reference because somebody won't end this game. Nancy Lenehan. I don't know if I'm saying it right, so please don't crucify me because, I mean, do you guys know how to say it? But she plays Carol Strong, which is Martin Sheen's wife in this movie. And she was actually on an episode of Gilmore Girls, the episode where Rory and Lorelai go on a road trip and stay in a bed and breakfast to see Harvard. So, yeah. So, my reference is not ping-ponging, just saying.
Yeah, your reference is also picked up on the fly.
Actually, my reference was picked up during the movie, and then I forgot that I had picked it up and I didn't write it down. So, thank you very much. Rude.
All right.
Rude.
So, where do we go from there?
So from there, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to the real movie versus the real life story versus the movie. We do this a lot because I really enjoy true stories, but I really enjoy when they're accurate.
Yeah.
And this one is questionable for a lot of reasons. It runs the gamut.
It kind of skirts the line of cutting corners where they can cut corners and then going back to the true and then...
Yeah, and it's more than the normal because it's not even just that Hollywood took some liberties.
Right.
But the person himself took some liberties. So we'll get into all of the different...
Well, right. There's how much can you believe when a guy's entire life has been about deception and lying and misrepresenting what is true?
Right.
As how do you believe that person when they tell you a story?
Right. And to set up, just to say... The only thing of this movie that has been proven is that he committed check fraud. Beyond that, and that includes the airline, the lawyer, the hospital, all of it, that is not proven. It is not validated. They have asked companies. Nobody is admitting it. So just keep that in mind when we go through all of this because a lot of the fact checking is going to be based on what was said by the real life Frank Abagnale for the book that was written. But again, the only thing proven is that check fraud happened. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will say that I do believe, at least plausibly, that a lot of the companies involved were very embarrassed and they don't want to admit that they had any kind of part in it. But
I believe that is a possibility.
There still would likely be some kind of record that someone could have found at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you want to start or do you need me to start?
A couple things that I picked up. The first was he didn't really have a relationship with his family after he ran away. I feel like the movie portraying that he had a positive relationship with his father while on the lam was kind of a nice touch, even if it was not true.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know necessarily that he didn't like his father or that he didn't have a positive relationship prior to leaving. They don't really clarify that in anything I read. It was just mostly that once he escaped the courtroom, he never had contact with his father again.
Right.
However, I will state that his father did, in fact, die of a freak accident where he broke his neck.
I did not hear that part, but that's horrible in every way.
Just saying. Can I add on to that?
Certainly.
So, since we're speaking of his father, one of the things that this movie does is portrays the father as kind of like a hustler or something like that, like we mentioned. And in the true story, his father was actually not at all a con man at all. He was a straight shooter entirely. And his father was, in fact, one of his first victims. So when he was a kid, I believe he was 15, Abagnale got a gasoline credit card from his father, and he devised a scheme where he used the gasoline card to buy tires, batteries, and other related items at gas stations and then asked the attendants to give him cash in return for the products. Ultimately, his father was liable for a bill amounting to $3,400 or equivalent to $28,394.
I would murder my son.
Yeah. So this wasn't a case of wanting to help the dad get out of debt, which this movie kind of made it seem like he was leaning towards with the whole like buying him a car and telling him he could help him, and that this wasn't the case. This kid was obviously damaged from a divorce. That part is true. But
on the lookout for number one.
Yes.
I'm looking out for myself and no one else matters, kind of.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what to think about that. It's not great, but...
No. So, there's no real way to find out any kind of clarification on the airline flights. The interesting intro scene where he's on the game show...
To tell the truth?
To tell the truth did happen, and he was not uncovered.
Yeah, and I want to watch that clip because apparently it's on YouTube. So if you guys want to check it out, it is apparently there. I will be watching it probably after this podcast. But yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that game show was real, but I'm kind of interested to watch it. Like, just in general, I enjoy like older game shows. Like, I used to like that network they had, like the Game Show Network or whatever it was. So
I'd be interested to see if they could do that now. But nowadays, everyone has a smartphone and they can be like, oh no.
Well, you could check your phone at the door for a game show.
Well, you could. I mean, we had to for Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, you did. They had those weird bag thingamabobbers you couldn't open, remember?
Yeah. It was kind of bizarre.
Yeah, so, like, they could do it.
All right, fair.
Also, the relationship with Tom Hanks, unfortunately, was not real.
That's kind of a shame, although it was a nice kind of endearing relationship through the movie to speak on Christmas every year.
Yeah, but the real Frank said, well, why would I do that? I didn't want to be caught.
Yeah. I mean, that's also reasonably fair. Like, why would you call the FBI the people that are responsible for catching you?
Exactly. But you did find it was actually at least loosely based on a real person, right?
Yes, there was an actual FBI agent. His name was Joe Shea. There was actually several agents responsible for trying to catch Frank Abagnale. But they became friends until Joe Shea's death, unfortunately, several years ago now. I don't have the date.
That's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, one thing that was not true, he was never on the America's Most Wanted posters because they reserved those for violent criminals.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And it makes sense he wouldn't be on it. However, what I read, now there's conflicting reports about this, so I'm not sure exactly what the truth is, but the capture of him was not as dramatic as played out on the screen. Not surprising at all.
No.
But so I found two different conflicting stories from him saying what happened. And one of them state that he was actually found out because there was a wanted poster for him and somebody in the grocery store recognized him from the wanted poster and he was turned in. So that's one story from Frank Abagnale.
Yep.
Another story from Frank Abagnale of how he got captured is that somebody he had previously dated on another alias recognized him on a new alias and realized what was going on, turned him in to his employer at the time, and then he was turned in. So I don't know which one is true, but at least what it leads me to believe is someone recognized him from something and then he was turned in, where it wasn't this big, like, you know, the FBI conning the con man situation.
Well, it's decidedly better than getting conned by the FBI in a French
Is it better?
printing factory.
You were found out from a poster or an ex. Is that better?
Well, most people that get caught, it's some kind of weird freak accident. I mean, there was a serial killer, I forget which one. They were caught because they had all of the murder equipment in their car, and they were caught sleeping in their car. It just
genius.
Yeah, it's sometimes bad luck is what gets you rather than good police work.
Right. Another thing that's not true is the comic book references. So the real Frank Abagnale did not use the Flash aliases. And really, I'm not sure what the reason behind the comic book references were in this. I couldn't really pick up on that. I mean, I like Barry Allen, the Flash, and all of that. And I'm guessing they're trying to say, like, he's super quick. That's the only thing that I came to. But it seemed like an odd thing to add in because... I mean, it wasn't needed?
It wasn't needed, but, I mean, they have to come up with a name, and it would make sense in the narrative that he's very young, which is what they were trying to portray there. In my opinion, that's what they were trying to get across, is that he's only 16, he's only 17 years old, he's a kid, he's a teenager.
Although I would say most comic book nerds are not kids.
No.
So, anyway, another thing that is contested is the fact that he passed the bar exam without cheating. So, the true story, according to Frank, is that he did not pass on the first try. He had to take it 3 times because back then you were allowed to take it as many times as you needed to pass the bar. I don't know if that's still true or not true. I think it varies by state according to everything I read. But what he said was that the questions remained pretty much the same, and then it was pretty much process of elimination from there. Now, I know that is no longer true. They obviously give you different versions of the test now. But so that's what he says. Is he was able to pass because he was able to do process of elimination. Other people have contested that, saying that there's no way you could have done that. The test varied too much for that to be possible. I don't genuinely know. I don't know if he cheated and he's just lying about it. I don't know. But that is a very contested thing in his story.
I mean, that would make test taking considerably easier if you could just take it as many times as you want.
Just do, okay, I'm going to do A on all of them. Okay, didn't do well. How about we're going to do B? All right, well, my odds went better, so I'm going to have to do more B's on the next one and add some C's in there to see how we do. Like, I mean...
Well, there's no real good way of doing that, unless you have a photographic or eidetic memory.
Right.
Where you can just
or if you know some of them and you only have to remember, like, okay, 3 and 5 I really don't know, so let's just play the numbers here.
Yeah. I mean, I did that when I had to take the securities exams, is I would fill out all the ones I know, and then after that it's just a process of elimination. It's probability on how many more that I need.
Well, and there's usually at least one that you can rule out. Like, they give you, like, this obnoxious, like, you know, what color is it? Red, green, blue, or... chocolate.
Should you defraud people? Yes, no, maybe, only if you don't get caught.
Yeah. It's usually one where you're just like, okay, get out of here.
Yeah.
So then you're down to 3 or 4 depending on which multiple choices you have.
It just gets considerably easier. And then if you get enough of them right that you already know, then you don't even have to worry about the ones you don't. So
that's fair. Thank you for teaching everybody how to cheat on a test.
Yeah. So, that's not really cheating. That's just filling in the ones you know.
Yeah, I guess. So I think that's mostly real versus fake. I'm sure there's more that we'll come up with as we go along. But we did kind of skip over the intro to the movie, which I did want to mention. So the beginning of this movie has like a very interesting intro sequence.
It's got like stamp art silhouettes from like the old film noir detective movies and TV shows. It's got a very just great vibe. I thought that the theme song went very well and paced.
Did it?
It did, in my opinion.
Did it? Oh.
Did you?
Did you like the stamp art?
I did not particularly care for that, but I like this. I like the soundtrack. I like the beginning music.
My tone deaf husband liked the soundtrack.
Yeah, I did.
Is that a ringing endorsement? I'm just wondering. So the intro sound to me was entirely annoying because it was repetitive and it was just like it hit my ears in a way that I just did not like. And I actually really enjoy film noir type stuff. Like I like all of the older style. Like I find that stuff so fascinating. But I could not stand that song. But I liked the silhouettes. I liked the artwork. I thought that was really cool, and it gave me that like, 50s murder mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
Type
It was.
vibe.
Yeah.
I was totally in for that. Anyway, we also want to talk about the fact that the real Frank Abagnale made a cameo in this movie.
He did. He did make a cameo. He was the French police officer that arrested Leonardo Dicaprio. And
I wish that I knew that prior to watching so that I could have kept an eye out for him, because I now know what he looks like because I've obviously looked it up, but I can't place that face in the movie at all. Can you?
I can, kind of. It's a very poorly lit scene, so it's like nighttime and in a not well lit street in Quebec, which is not in France, but
beside the point.
So I'm interested to just watch that scene again, in addition to the To Tell the Truth clip of him in the 60s or 70s.
No, I'm in. I'm interested in that. But, okay. So is that everything that we have for real versus?
I think that's the majority of things, yeah.
Okay. So, because I'm a female, we're going to do this. And y'all can hate me if you want.
Buckle up and brace yourselves, gentlemen.
Okay. So, there are quite a few female characters in this movie, which should be a real positive thing.
But they're all terrible?
First of all, it does not pass the Bechdel test. I cannot think of a scene where they are talking to only other women or only about things that are not related to men. I cannot think of a scene that happens.
Because it doesn't exist in this movie.
Okay. So I want to make sure I wasn't wrong. But bigger than that, the females in this movie are atrocious. There is not a redeemable character in the mix. The only one that you could argue would be a redeemable character would be Amy Adams.
Yeah.
And she is not.
She turns him in to the feds.
Well, that's not my problem with her, okay? My problem with the women in this film is they really make it seem like women are dumb, women are impressionable, and women are easily swayed by sex.
And tricked.
Yes. First of all, I'm just going to say, most women have done the tricking, so we know the game. There is no way you're going to tell me that someone as pretty as Amy Adams did not recognize
or Elizabeth Banks or Jennifer Garner.
Right,
come on.
that they did
or
not
Ellen Pompeo,
recognize
for God's
someone
sakes.
using their looks to get what they wanted. Don't tell me they didn't. No. I don't buy it. No. So I don't know if that was Frank Abagnale's story. I don't know. I couldn't find validation of that. But that was very, okay, so we're all dumb. That's what you're saying, we're all dumb. That's, okay, ew. And then also, Jennifer Garner's character, just gross. Why was that even in the film? She said, if I was for sale at the convenience store downstairs, what would you pay for me? Ew.
I don't know why that was relevant to the movie, and that scene did 100% seem just ham-fisted and thrown in there.
It almost seemed like they wanted Jennifer Garner in the film, so they just made her a prostitute.
Well, it's almost like they had spoken to Frank Abagnale. He's like, I'm only going to let you do this movie if that scene is in this movie. And it's like, dude, what?
Is it just because he got one over on a older woman? I was confused.
Or a model? Or he just wanted to brag about having sex with a model? I don't...
It just didn't seem to serve a purpose and only put women in a bad light. And I just really didn't like it.
I can thoroughly agree with you on that. For that scene specifically, that was the most egregious.
Also, the mother. So we have to talk about that. So what the film made it seem, and I don't know if it's true. I do know there was a divorce. I don't know if the mother, was a straight up, can we say whore?
She was a hoe. She was a hoe.
That makes me think of that TikTok song. I was a hoe.
Or the thing that's going around with the dads with their children and a hoe as the picture, because after they get separated, they're divorced.
Oh, like a garden hoe?
Like a garden hoe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's the mom.
Great.
And it's kind of like,
Wonderful.
You're doing that with your children, and they're going to get that reference at some point in the next 10 years.
That's awful.
Yeah.
So that makes you guys look worse than the women. I just want to let you know.
It makes everyone look bad. Yeah, really.
Right. But anyway, so the way the movie set it up is the mother was cheating on the husband because he was broke. That's the way this played. Now, I don't know if I read it wrong. I don't know, but that's the way this played.
That's how I got the vibe as well.
Yeah. And even when the divorce happened and he chose to run away, he didn't really choose anybody to live with, she ignored him. She had no contact with him. She didn't seem to care. A mother would be looking for her son, constantly trying to contact. They don't show any of that.
Well, they did have that one scene where they go to interview her and she's like, I'll take care of it. How much does he owe? I'm sure.
Oh, good for her. She opened her checkbook. Ew.
Yeah. I mean, that's better than not caring at all.
If it takes a police officer showing up at your door for you to care for your son, you're a bad mom. Like,
I would agree with you on that. I'm not disagreeing with you.
So all I'm saying is there wasn't a redeemable character. And now I'm not saying that in a movie you have to have all the women characters be good people, because that's not reality. But they all sucked that bad. They were all that bad in his life.
Well, there was such a wide discrepancy between the male characters and the female characters in this movie.
Yeah, there was. It was just women were to serve the purpose of being deceived and being awful to further his reason for being awful.
Or to be a screen to block him from the FBI.
Yeah, there was no, like, a woman that tried to help him in any way, or a woman that maybe decided, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, I can't be part of this. There was no woman with any moral integrity at all in this film, and it was just, I mean, I guess Amy Adams turning him in, but I wouldn't say she did that on her own integrity. She did it because her father told her to.
Probably.
So, anyway, running away with that, but we just had to make sure that was mentioned. So, another thing that we like to talk about a lot in general in life is nature versus nurture, which...
Well, before we get to that, I do think that it is fair to say that outside of Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, every other character in this movie, with maybe the exception of Christopher Walken, was really stupid.
Yes, and I think that has to do with...
Supremely dumb.
And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Frank Abagnale or whoever exaggerated this story.
Oh yeah, he's making it seem like I'm the smartest, everyone else is a moron. That's the narrative. That's the story that he wants to present because
obviously.
Well, right. I mean, it's an ego thing. He has to be the best.
Right. But there is definitely people he came in contact with along the way that caught on to him, knew better, didn't let him get away with it. Come on.
I mean, interesting enough, in the real life story, he did escape from prison.
He did?
Yes. So this is back during the time where there was civil rights violations of prisoners. Mm-hmm. And it was a really hot topic where the prisons were very concerned about inspectors impersonating prisoners and receiving bad treatment and then getting the whole prison shut down. Mm-hmm. So he pretended to be one of those people and walked out.
How did he pull that off?
With help from the outside. They smuggled in an expired badge where he put his picture on it and a couple of the things where he then called the fake FBI agent.
And, of course he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as long as he figured it out, I guess. I mean, the prison system was that dumb.
Well, right. All right. Moving on to nature versus nurture.
So nature versus nurture. Now, we disagree on this in a lot of realms, but in this movie, it's interesting because it seems the real life story in the movie disagrees with itself.
Right.
So, do you want to take...
Well, so the movie, it's more... He gets the slick talking from his father, and then he just does what he has to do to survive, and...
Yeah, and he's almost trying to make his father proud, it seems.
It's the two little mice. One keeps going and does everything it has to do.
To make the cream.
To make it into butter.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how the sausage is made. As long as the sausage is made, it doesn't matter who you step on to get where you need to go, as long as you get there.
Right. I mean, that's the American dream, isn't it?
Well, right. But then the real life story is very opposite of that.
Yeah, his father was not at all a smooth talker and taught him to be a straight shooter and taught him to be the right side of the law, and he wasn't. So that very much seems nature, because where would he have been taught that? He went to, it seemed like a private school from what I could read. Decent family, like no other than divorce, no other thing that would cue that in.
Yeah.
So nature.
But I think it's also nurture. I mean,
why do you say that?
Well, nurture in that when you do run away from home, you do have to do things that you're not proud of to get by. I'm sure. I've never run away from home, but I just can't imagine it's an easy life to start with, and you just gotta...
When you're 16 and running away?
Exactly.
I mean, I can't imagine it's easy, but also I'm sure that there are ways to do it more legitimately.
Well, yeah, but...
Can't you, ask for...
Well, at the same time, you're robbing banks rather than people. It's not like he went out on a street and held a knife to somebody and said, "Give me all your money."
So now we're debating the morality of robbing a bank versus robbing a person, a faceless corporation versus an actual
Well, they're all insured by
individual.
the federal government, which is why the FBI was involved.
They're FDIC insured. Is that what we're doing? That's what we're doing. Wow. Woo! Okay. I am very straight shooter.
It's
if you
very
can't tell.
wrong to rob anyone, but if you were to rob someone, it's better to not rob an 85-year-old grandmother at knife point, is what I'm saying.
Just for clarity's sake, I'm saying you shouldn't rob anyone. Full stop. Follow the
But
laws.
there are degrees of that. Like, there are people that you shouldn't rob less than other people. Surely.
I don't burn CDs, okay?
Oh, you used to. You had to have used LimeWire or Napster back in the day.
I
Don't
used
you
Napster and then found out it was illegal and I freaked out and I deleted everything off my computer in a hot panic that I was going to have somebody knocking on my door asking for my computer. Not kidding.
The FBI?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't pirate movies, okay? I won't even use a pirated movie. I am afraid.
Yes, I know.
So, we're on different sides of the law here.
I guess.
Anyways. Okay. And then the only other thing we really kind of wanted to talk about this movie was Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio's relationship. Because I think it's really interesting that they're almost like the missing piece of each other's life. So Tom Hanks went through a divorce and he has a daughter that he doesn't see anymore. And then Leonardo DiCaprio goes through his parents' divorce where he no longer sees his father that he very much looks up to. And it's like they take each other's spot there.
Right. It's almost like mentor and mentee relationship. It's a very kind of father-son dynamic almost, where there's a respect for Leo DiCaprio for what he's doing from Tom Hanks, and there's a respect for Tom Hanks because Leonardo DiCaprio realizes that he's very dedicated and he's going to win at some point. That's just, he's not going to give up. He's the Terminator. He's just going to keep going and going and going and going.
Right. I mean, that whole dynamic was heartwarming for me. I love seeing that. That's just kind of...
It makes me really sad that that's not actually what happened.
I know.
Like, it's kind of a letdown after researching this to find out that that's not the deal. That's not what happened.
Yeah, it's almost like I wanted to meet them as a pair. Like, they were a pair in my mind. But we shouldn't forget to mention that the director of this movie is Steven Spielberg because he's Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And you wanted to make an anecdote about that.
So we have been watching a lot of television in quarantine, and we have been watching Would I Lie to You, which is a great British panel show.
Wonderful.
Thoroughly recommend. And one of the guests said that they interviewed Steven Spielberg without recognizing who he was.
Yeah, they thought he was just a nice old man who might have been someone's father that was kind of lost. And so she started talking to him before realizing that he was Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
So how awkward would that be? Like, I mean...
Oh, super awkward. Like that's just...
I believed she was lying because the whole premise of this game show is to find out the person's lying or not. And she was telling the truth. So she was a reporter that didn't know who Steven Spielberg was.
A film and TV reporter that was covering the BAFTAs.
That didn't know who Steven Spielberg was. Yeah. So embarrassment much?
So embarrassing.
Yeah. But, I mean, I just want to mention him because we do mention the directors from time to time. I don't feel that sometimes I will give you guys
Steven
like a
Spielberg
background
is
on...
Steven Spielberg, and this has a very Spielberg feel in terms of it's a very story, narrative-driven, paced movie like Saving Private Ryan and any of the other movies that he's ever done.
Right. Is that the only other Steven Spielberg film we've done?
I think. I mean, we could at some point do... I believe it's Schindler's List is Spielberg.
Yeah, if you guys have Steven Spielberg films you want us to do, I'm actually surprised. One other one. I mean, he's so well known. Like, what are we doing with our lives? So, if you guys have more Steven Spielberg films, please tweet them at me because...
There's a long list, and it's impossible to uncover all of them. Like
Uncover?
Encapsulate and cover all of the movies.
Of course, but I mean, let us know your favorites because we're always looking for more recommends from you guys, and we need to be doing more because what the heck is wrong with us? Yeah. But anyway, I usually do give a background on directors and things like that, but I feel like most people know him, so I don't necessarily think you need a background on Steven Spielberg, but you know, at least you know that he's the one who did it. Anyways, I'm sure you have about a 20-minute history minute.
Tyler's History Minute.
I guess let's get into it.
I have a little bit of a history minute.
Yeah.
So this movie focuses primarily on check fraud. And
Does it?
Yes. Check fraud has been a problem since checks and paper money were starting. So originally, human society worked it on the barter system. I had what you needed, you had what I needed, we just traded, right? Which doesn't work particularly well if I don't need anything that you have, and then you need something that I have, because
I can't get it.
Exactly. There's you have to find someone else that has something that I want that needs something that you have, and it's a
circle. It's
a circular nightmare of running around trying to find chickens or clothes or whatever I need.
Right.
So they started currency, money, paper money, or any kind of money, gold money, etc., as a medium of exchange. It got to the point where precious metal money was too cumbersome because it's heavy. So they started using promissory, basically IOUs. So you put all the money in a bank vault and say, this is worth however much gold, you just have to bring it in and we'll give you that X amount of money. And people started trading those instead of taking it and turning it in for money. And that's where
money comes from.
Banking and money comes from.
Yeah.
And then similar concept for checks where it's basically an IOU. A check is a written amount for how much you owe a person, and you would take that to the bank and collect the money. Problem being is that if it's not your bank, they don't know that you have the money. So to this day, there's a problem with check fraud in terms of having to put a hold on the funds until they've cleared the other bank, because they have to send it through the Federal Reserve System. It has to be cleared at the other bank, and the money is transferred over. Now, the age of electronics and computers has fixed that for a lot of transactions, because it's a push of a button and it's done. But if you're still using paper checks, it's a bit of a process. And then historically, money and checks were written by banks specifically, not by the federal government and backed by anything. But once they realized that people were trading the IOUs, they realized that they could start writing more of them using the same money, which led to fractional reserve banking, which only doesn't work if everyone goes and tries to collect money all at once.
So it sounds safer.
Well, it is, but it's if everyone goes, say, for the Great Depression to the bank doesn't have the money, and then you don't have any money.
Oh.
So
yikes.
So not safer.
Gotcha.
Which led to the FDIC, which is federally insured deposits.
I know, I said that earlier.
I know.
See, I'm so smart. I learned so much from my finance husband.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you didn't mention Pan Am, which I thought you would have done a little bit of history on, because Pan Am went bankrupt in the 90s, but they were the first for a lot of things. They had like the first transatlantic routes. I don't know everything. I don't have it all written down because I thought you were going to cover it, but they were the first for so many different things, and they were like the premier airline for a while, and a lot of their routes got bought out by Delta.
Yep.
But and they were very prominent in this film, and they were the company that he claimed to work for, but he actually never went on a Pan Am flight because he was afraid that they would check it. So he never did that.
No, the first flight he ever took was on TWA, which was founded by Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was played by Leonardo Dicaprio in The Aviator.
Interesting.
Yeah. So kind of another
circle?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess you didn't find Pan Am interesting, but...
No, I was talking about banking and finance.
Yeah, of course. That's your jam.
How did you not know that that's where that was going?
Well, I was interested in knowing about Pan Am. But anyways, I guess I will dream on, and maybe we can do a movie about Pan Am so I can get that information.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more interesting to me to talk about the finance world. It's at one point, banks had to send the IOUs to the other banks with Messenger. Like, you had this stack of IOUs, you sent them to the bank to get the money, which is just a stupid system.
It does sound ridiculous.
It does work somehow. I don't understand how it works, but it works.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
Anyway, so before we get into audience ask, I did want to mention, because we didn't really talk about the ending of the movie. The movie does end with him actually working for the FBI, which seems to be true for the most part.
Yes, he was brought into the FBI and released from prison to work with them in their check fraud department and financial crimes. They actually required that he work for free and consult for free. So he had to work a job while out of prison to pay his bills while he was basically working for free for the feds. And he tried a bunch of jobs and he couldn't stick with anything, so he went into a bank and said, I'm going to give a presentation about what they should look for. If you find it valuable, please pay me $50 and then refer me to all of the other banks in the area. And that's how he started his current business, which is security and helping people prevent being the victims of fraud and scams and cons.
Right, Abagnale and Associates.
Yes.
Yeah. And he also has a AARP podcast on...
Yes, most recently he's been recognized by the AARP for helping to try to protect seniors, especially from a lot of the scams that are targeted towards them at these times. The computer issues and things that are just... My grandfather got a call about me being in prison when I wasn't in prison, and he works to protect people rather than conning them.
Well, that's a nice change.
And he makes better money.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he makes more money than we ever will.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, so we should get into our audience ask questions.
Audience asks.
So let me just pop over there really quickly. I will say that one of these audience ask questions I actually had to look up because, y'all, I don't know. But so one of them says, this is by Rev Johnny Blumpkin. He says, if all it takes to be a pilot is the right uniform and a can-do attitude, then why was what Sully did so great? I don't know who Sully is.
Sully is Tom Hanks' character that landed the plane in, I think it was the East River in New York a few years ago. They made a movie about it.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
That seems a bit unfair given the fact that he's an actual pilot that did his job commendably and landed the aircraft in emergency circumstances perfectly in a river and no one died. So that's a stupid question.
That's not very nice.
His name has Bumpkin in it. He's not a nice person.
Blumpkin.
Yeah. It's not a nice term.
Okay,
so
well,
it's a stupid question.
Okay, well, that was mean, and I did. If I had known you were going to say that, I wouldn't have said that on the podcast. We already answered this question. Then we already talked about the real story basis, so we'll go into the question where I had to kind of look it up. But we'll see what you know first. So Real Feels Podcast says, I want to know what happened to those girls that became stewardesses, because obviously they didn't get the jobs legally, and it was all fake. So what became of them? And then also he says, what charity do you think Frank would have donated some of his stolen money to?
That's a very good question. I don't know what happened to them because obviously as soon as he got through Miami Airport, he dumped them wherever and just went about his life, right? Like he's not going to bring 12 women everywhere he goes to commit fraud.
So, I looked this up and it says that Frank really did go on a promotional tour for Pan Am with 8 girls he had interviewed out of school and promised a shot at becoming a Pan Am stewardess. All expenses paid by Pan Am and some $300,000 extra pocketed by Abagnale with phony company expense checks. His book, Catch Me If You Can, details it. The girls did hear from Pan Am, as a matter of fact, after 3 months of a steady stream of photographs from dozens of European cities and all showing the same 8 girls in Pan Am stewardess costumes. Advertising executives of Pan Am launched an investigation. Eventually, the entire matter ended up in O'Reilly's hands, which is the name of the actual guy that was Tom Hanks, and he definitely sorted it out and put into focus for the carriers and officers and also for the girls. So apparently, they all took it very well, and they actually posed for a photo with him later on in life as older Frank Abagnale.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
It really all happened. They did go on tons of flights with him. They got tons of photographs, but it was all fake. He just used fake checks to do it.
I mean, if you can, why not? Like,
I guess. I mean,
it is fraud and it is stealing, but whatever. In for penny, in for pound. You're already committing fraud.
And I mean, me as a stewardess, I would have been like, well, I mean, at least I got all those flights for free.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get a job, but...
Well, you don't have a job, but then you did get to travel.
Yeah, so...
Win?
Yeah, I guess that's still a win, right?
Also, you're not the one that's culpable with law enforcement because you were the one that was scammed. So,
Right.
like, you're not going to get in any trouble because you didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. So, win-win.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. But what charity do you think Frank would have donated some of his stolen money to?
I honestly have no idea. Is there a charity set up to help old people that have been victims of scams? If not, there should be.
I mean, I guess AARP is type of charity, right?
Well, I think AARP stands for American Association of Retired People, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's a charity. I think it's more of an association or organization.
Gotcha. Okay.
I honestly have no idea. I mean, he's not going to donate to charity because he steals. Like, why would you steal just to give it back?
That's fair. I don't see that he had any soft spots for anything. I mean, maybe for like things that help children overcome divorce situations or something. That seems to be the only hardship he had in his life. So
I don't know. There's no real good charity that he could give to that, to my knowledge, he has any connection with.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I'd be interested to know if there's an answer. And if the real Frank Abagnale did donate any of his money, I don't know. I would assume it was mostly seized.
Yeah.
So that's my assumption. I don't know. I didn't read that anywhere. So anyway.
Yeah. So, ratings?
I guess so.
Reviews.
So Rotten Tomatoes has a soft spot for this movie.
Oh.
The critic score is 96.
Wow.
Audience score of 89.
That's still really high for us.
That is very high. We do a lot of
Not so great movies.
Well, not critically acclaimed movies. That's entirely true.
Yeah.
That's just our MO. I would give it an 8.5. It's a solid movie. I mean, it's spectacularly cast. It's
Absolutely.
very well acted. The story was compelling, even if it was not necessarily true. I'm taking points for being less than accurate. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I was going to say 7.5. I have to take points for the female characters because that's atrocious. And I have to take points for it not being close to accurate. Now, the problem is taking points there is I don't know if it was Hollywood's fault or his fault. That is hard to tell. Or both, right? So that's a hard thing to say. But it was very interesting. It kept my attention. It was paced well. And the characters were, they had good chemistry. You saw a character arc, all of that, which are all things that are really important to me. So I did really enjoy it. I just wish that it was a little bit more true. But then again, I don't know what's true. So
no one does.
Exactly. So I would be interested to see more movies like this, though. But with this kind of pacing. Not slow and just kind of drawn out like some of the movies you've made me watch.
Wow.
But quick-paced movies like this that are based on true stories, I'd be super interested to see more of.
All right.
But anyway, so there's that. So next week is my choice.
Your choice.
And we are doing another chick flick, which I know y'all aren't such a fan of, but this one is personal to me and my family, and you actually wanted to see the rest of it. So we actually started watching this together back in Virginia last year, and then something came up. We had something pre-scheduled, and we weren't able to finish it. And you've been asking me to finish watching it forever.
Well, I hate sitting down and watching a movie and then not finish it. It's one of those things that gets on my nerves.
Yeah, so you've been wanting to watch the end of it, so I figured this was a good time to add it to the list. We have a spot for it. So the next week's movie is The Other Woman, and we'll be giving you the whole rundown about why I don't watch this movie that often. But yeah, so I'm excited for that. This will probably be the last chick flick for a little while. So if you like them, enjoy it now. If you don't, you can do your hoorays. But if you guys want to talk to us outside the podcast, I am on Twitter at cinematicallyc. Tyler is on Twitter at blametylercc. We also have email, cinematicallycorrect@gmail.com. You can find us in a myriad of other places if you look for at cinematicallyc. There's plenty of places you can find us. Twitter is your best bet.
By far, not even close.
Yeah, basically. So thank you to Jake at Athens Music for our intro and outro music, and we will be back next week with The Other Woman.
Thank you all for listening.